It is crazy to think that we are getting really close to the 1 year mark since the next generation of consoles have been released. With the current availability and the way it's been for the past year trying to obtain these new consoles, next gen gaming almost seems like a myth to many. For me, I definitely wasn't a consumer that was looking to get a next gen upgrade on day one. I was more so looking to upgrade when the time came that I needed to, whether that being me not being able to play certain titles on my current system or things like that. Although we aren't quite there yet with last gen being completely obsolete, there are some limitations gaming on last generation of consoles. One of the big ones I was looking into was with the new Battlefield release coming out very soon and wanting to play that with quite a few of my friends. There are limitations to playing on last gen, such as not being able to get in the full 128 player servers, and there are some other obvious performance limitations too when gaming on last gen, and the experience is obviously not going to be as good as playing on the new hardware. So as I mentioned, availability has been extremely scarce when it comes to next generation of consoles, whether you're looking for a PS5, Series X, Series S. Until recently, the Series S has become more and more available directly through the Microsoft's official website. So I myself and one of my close friends who was waiting very patiently to get a Series X had a couple of close chances where he had added it to the cart, but his payment and processing just didn't go through in time and they sold out on a number of occasions. He actually ended up going with the Series S. I wasn't looking to upgrade, but since they were available, I decided to pick up the Xbox Series S. So in this video, guys, we're going to be going over the kind of a short-term review. So we're going to be going over the pros, cons of the Series S, and whether or not it's a viable option here in 2021. So starting off talking about the unboxing experience of this device and the first look, getting a first glance at this console in person. It's super cool. I absolutely love the form factor of this device. It is the smallest Xbox ever created, which I think is really cool. It's a great form factor, and it's really neat how much power is packed inside of such a small form factor. It is crazy to see the side-by-side comparisons between the Series S and the previous Gen 1S that I have. And you guys in these clips can see a pretty good size difference between the two. It is very substantial, and it's crazy to think that the Series S comes in with so much more power as far as specs goes. An even more crazy size comparison is holding my Nintendo Switch next to the Series S. The Series S isn't much wider than the Nintendo Switch. As far as what's included with this console, it's not a whole lot, basically just what you need to get started. We have the power cable, which once again is just a standard power cable. There's no external brick, as all the power supply is inside of the device, which is really neat. It's amazing that they're able to fit the power source inside of the console, even being this much smaller than previous generations of consoles. A high-speed HDMI cable is also included, which I would recommend using if you don't already have a HDMI cable that has a little bit more of an increased bandwidth to get the most FPS and hertz out of your display. And it also does include a controller, no surprise there. I kind of discounted the idea of the new controller just because it looks so similar to the previous gen, but the biggest things off the bat from a stock controller perspective is it does have some texture on the grips, which feels pretty nice. It's very small texture, but very subtle and feels good in the hand. I love the new D-pad. It's super clicky and responsive, but a little bit different than the previous generation controllers that we've seen. Another huge pro is it is USB Type-C, so no more micro USB, which is really nice. I've seen too many times where micro USB cables just not as reliable as Type-C in my opinion. So really nice controller upgrade for next gen on Xbox side. Even though they're very subtle differences, I think they do make a difference. So as far as the setup goes on the new console, it was super easy. I basically just hooked it up and opened up the Xbox app on my phone, and it detected a new device and I was able to set it up all from there, which was fantastic. It was actually super seamless, so definitely big props on the setup and user experience when setting up one of these new consoles. So first impressions, being in the UI of the new console and getting a feel for the menu and stuff. As far as the user interface goes, it's pretty similar to what you would experience on the previous gen consoles like the 1S, 1X, depending on which update you're on. But very similar, kind of a vertical UI, which is kind of cool. I'm still kind of used to the horizontal UI where you have more pages going to the right and left. One major difference off the bat is just how snappy the next generation consoles are. And I haven't experienced the Series X, but the Series S first hands-on is extremely snappy, and I think a lot of that is due to the SSD. Load times are very quick compared to other consoles. The boot up time is extremely fast as well, and then just moving around the menus and navigating is very snappy, so I definitely love that. So loading into games like Red Dead Redemption, Forza, which I'm not super familiar with, but pretty much any title that you experience a little bit longer loading times are greatly improved as far as load times go with the Series S. And that is all due to that new solid state hard drive on the inside, which it makes a huge difference whether you're using an SSD on a console or on a PC. That is my biggest recommendation that I have given to people that want to speed up their PCs in the past, and I ask them what kind of hard drive they're using, and a lot of times they're on a spinning disk, and the SSD makes all the difference. Now, talking about the thing that everybody wants to know when gaming on a next-gen console or the Series S in this matter is the graphics. How does it look when gaming? And right off the bat, the experience of booting it up and getting into that menu, the output display from this console is super sharp, very sharp, vibrant colors. It's got a really good look to it. Some might think it's a little bit over sharpened and a little oversaturated, but I think for a console it looks really good. And same goes for in the games. The colors are extremely vibrant, very rich, and the image is tack sharp. As far as the two different types of displays that I use to test this new console, I use my Alienware ultra wide monitor, which I have right here, and it is a 3440 by 1440p panel, and it does run at 100 Hertz. The image will be a little bit cropped on the sides because the next gen consoles don't support the aspect ratio of this particular monitor, but it still gives a very good picture. 1440p at 100 Hertz, so if anybody is upgrading, that's probably going to be the type of monitor they'll be upgrading to when gaming on the Series S. And the other option I was using was just my 42-inch LCD TV from LG, and it's just a 60 Hertz TV, so it's pretty bare bones, pretty basic, and it's only running 1080p. So now my experience is probably going to be different from other people's when gaming on the Series S and my impressions of the overall graphics, because I'm coming from the Xbox One S. So if you're coming from this One X, the naming convention is still fucking me up, but if you're coming from the One X, you might not notice too much of a graphical difference going to the Series S, but if you are coming from the Xbox One S going to the Series S, if you're like me, you'll notice a very big improvement in graphics. Resolution definitely isn't everything, and that's something I've come to realize when doing a lot of PC gaming. Getting that very smooth, high frame rate, high refresh rate experience when gaming, it just improves it immensely. I mean, even versus something like 4K with a lower refresh rate, I'll take a lower resolution with a higher refresh rate any day. When gaming on the Series S, it is a very comfortable gaming experience, and I'm definitely pretty used to 100 Hertz gaming on this PC and this particular 100 Hertz monitor. And I could definitely say that most of the games that I was running, it did feel like it was hitting that 100 FPS, 100 Hertz mark. So I think no matter what next gen console you're looking at, the specs kind of need to be taken with a grain of salt, because when they say the Series X can run 4K 120 FPS, that is absolute best case scenario, and there might not even be many titles out. There isn't many titles out there that can actually support that and that are actually optimized for that. So that is absolute best case scenario. I have seen videos where some people are trying to hit that 120 FPS mark, and the resolution drops down to below 1080p. So really depends on the title, and like I said, that's best case scenario, so definitely don't go into it thinking that those are going to be the actual specs you're getting out of these devices. So for the Series S, the target performance is 1440p, 60 FPS, but they do say up to 120 FPS at 1440p, but that is absolute best case scenario, which I don't know if there is a title that can actually run that at those particular specs. You might have some dropout between the FPS and the resolution, but no matter which title you use, so there's always a trade-off when it comes to that stuff on console. As far as looking at the specs on paper, it's pretty crazy to see the massive increase in performance going from the 1S to the Series S. It's pretty substantial, so I think anybody that is on the fence about upgrading, or they're kind of torn between the Series X and Series S, if they're coming from a 1S, either of those options is going to give you a substantial upgrade from what you already have, in my opinion. There's a big jump in CPU performance from the 1S to the Series S, and that kind of goes across the board. I think the only thing that the new Series S kind of lacks in versus the previous offerings from the 1S is just the onboard storage when you purchase the device. The 1S, the model that I have, did come with a terabyte of storage, and the Series S right now only comes with 500 gigs, but that is 500 gigs of SSD storage, but it is a little bit light when you're talking about all these new titles coming out that do take up quite a bit of space. So now that we've kind of gone over my overall experience when gaming on the Xbox Series S, I'm just going to kind of fire off the pros and cons of this device. And starting off with the pros, this is a really good option just to get you in the door with next generation. And it's at a very great price point, being $299. And right now it is the only option you can pick up from a first-party retailer. Along with going next gen with this particular console, it is a very significant performance increase, especially if you're coming from the Xbox One S. If you're coming from the Series X, I can't necessarily speak on that one, but coming from the One S, you're getting a very good graphical increase in performance, along with those higher FPS capabilities. So the gaming experience is going to be a lot better. Another pro, in my opinion, this might be kind of subjective, but I love the form factor. It's a super small compact console, so you can fit it in just about any entertainment center or desk setup. And you can lay it down in a horizontal orientation like I have it, or you can stand it up in a vertical orientation. Some more pros talking about performance: it is extremely fast when it comes to the boot up times and load times of your games. Having that internal SSD is a big game changer when it comes to that. So if you are coming from the 1S or 1X, that is one thing you'll notice coming from those devices to this one, is those faster boot up and load times on your games. So another obvious performance increase is the higher FPS, higher refresh rate out of this device. And having the HDMI 2.1, you could really utilize that higher performance FPS, being able to plug in a higher refresh rate TV or monitor and really see all those frames displayed right in front of you. So now talking about the cons of this device, and there's a couple, and a lot of these might be a little bit more subjective, or it might be features that you can do without. But talking about those, we are missing a disk drive on this device. So for the Series S, this is a digital only console, so there's no disk drive to insert any sort of game disc or use it as a Blu-ray player or stuff like that. So you are lacking the disk drive on this device. Another one kind of relating to multifunction use is this one does lack a HDMI in port, which I wasn't really sure what the application was on the 1S and 1X for the HDMI in, but a lot of people use it as a pass-through for some sort of device like a cable box so they can run their TV through it or something like that. So this device doesn't have the HDMI in, which I think is pretty marginal for many. I don't think there's a whole lot of people that use it, but there might be some users out there that do. And my final con, which is kind of the elephant in the room, is the onboard storage you get when you purchase this device. And that is a 500 gig SSD internally. So 500 gigs these days is pretty light when it comes to the next generation of gaming, as a lot of these games are getting really big as far as the overall size, and with updates, they just keep growing. So 500 gigs is going to be light for many, and it might not be so bad if you don't want a huge library on your console and you kind of just install games as you play them and then uninstall them and get different games. But if you're somebody that likes to have a large library on this device, 500 gigs is going to be light, so you're definitely going to need to look into some sort of expansion. And there are plenty of ways you can expand the storage on this console. You can use some sort of external hard drive that is designed for gaming, or you can use like an external portable SSD. And then there are the proprietary expansion cards from Seagate that are really nice. Talking in terms of storage per dollar, the Seagate expansion cards are very expensive compared to other options on the market. So that was the big argument when talking about the Series S versus the Series X. Obviously, there is a price difference between the two, and there is obviously a big performance difference, but a lot of people made the argument that if you buy the Series S, you're going to need to buy some sort of storage expansion, whether that's a external hard drive or one of those proprietary SSDs. You're going to need to invest the money in some extra storage, and by the time you do that, you might be pretty close to the MSRP price of an Xbox Series X, which is a strong argument if the Series X was ever available. I mean, right now you cannot buy it at MSRP unless, you get lucky and you're somewhere where they just got them in, or you see them pop up online and you're able to, get it into your cart and check out real quick. But other than that, I mean, the only other way to really get one right now is through secondhand on eBay for some pretty high scalped prices. So I don't think that's a really strong argument when talking about the Series S versus the Series X. And like I said, the Series S is the only one that's available at MSRP right now. So it definitely would have been nice to get a little bit more storage out of the Series S on purchase. But when you start off with it, the operating system takes up a pretty good chunk of that 500 gigs. So I believe you're left with around 360 gigs for your games, which isn't much, but it's not the end all be all. You can get expansion cards, you can get expansion storage for this device. So that is going to wrap up this one, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it maybe helped you make a decision whether or not you want to wait and try to get a Series X, or if you want to just go ahead and scoop up the Series S while they're available. And hopefully this gave you a good idea of pros, cons, and whether or not this is a viable option in 2021 for next-gen gaming. And for me, this is 100% a viable console to go with when it comes to next-gen. It does have its shortcomings, but it is kind of made up for in the price tag, being that entry-level price tag compared to others. And this console will certainly get you into all the next-gen games with a pretty good performance increase compared to previous gen consoles like the One S. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like on it, and if you want to see more tech-related videos like this one, be sure to subscribe. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.